Hello, 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 hello. I am excited for tonight's message. We're going to tie together the past 3, 4, 5 weeks with a really powerful message tonight. And I'm going to do everybody a huge favor because I know many of you watch bits and pieces of these Facebook Live messages, but don't necessarily, really invest the time to study them, to learn them. And I know that because of all the questions that I get in private messages. So I'm going to do everyone a huge favor. I'm going to tie together the key points from the last 4 or 5 weeks, and I'm going to give you some real life examples. So here's probably the most important thing I want you to do right now. I want you to make a simple decision. I want you to ask yourself this question, and please feel free. If the answer is no, I'm good with it. But do you really want to make a commitment to your success in whatever you want, whether it's your health? I know some of you have talked about wanting to be healthier, and I don't mean just losing weight. I mean be healthier overall. If it's you really want to make that commitment to be healthy here in 2019, then we're going to make a plan because, again, I told you we're going to spend all of January preparing. If your goal is to have more financial stability, whether it's to make more money in your home-based business, whether it's to start a home-based business, whether it's to just get a promotion or be more productive at your job, that's fine. Whatever you're looking to do, what I want you to do is ask yourself, don't do it for me, but ask yourself, are you committed? Are you committed for the next 11 months? And the reason I say that is I specifically wanted to remove the idea of making a New Year's resolution and coming out of the blocks in January with doing the same old tired, make a list of the things that you want, because right about now, January 20-something or the first week of February, people are already frustrated and quitting. So we're doing something radically different. If you've been watching these Facebook Live videos for the last 3, 4, 5 weeks, all we've been doing is preparing. And tonight I'm going to tie together some of the key components along with the story that I'm not sure. So I'm going to take a quick second. Give me a thumbs up or a yes if you watched the entire interview that I did on Sunday with Mr. David Kincaid. The reason I say that is, well, I'll tell you in a second, but I really want to know how many of you actually watched the interview all the way through. And I'm not condemning or criticizing because we chose to do it right in the middle of the 2 championship games for the NFL. So I know people were watching the Rams and the Saints, and I know people were watching Kansas City and New England, and I decided that would be the perfect time to do the video because I wanted to know who really wanted to see it, and more importantly, I wanted to take all the pressure away from David from having a huge live audience, because I told him everybody's going to be watching football. This is the perfect time to do the Facebook Live. But I really would like to know how many of you watched it all the way through, because this young man is the living example of everything that I've been talking about and everything that we're going to talk about tonight. So understand, it's not possible. You're not able anymore to say to me, I can't. And if you still in your mind think that there are things that you cannot do, then sit back and enjoy tonight, because I'm going to give you the highlights and I'm going to remove any potential ability for you to convince yourself that there's anything that you can't do. And to kind of give you the highlights just so you can completely understand why this is so powerful, what I'm going to highlight for you is, David at the age of 10. So I want you to think about this. In 1980, before the internet, without a Google, without any type of ability to go just punch on a computer, in 1980, he was 10 years old. He set a goal to earn $3,000 as a 10 or 11-year-old, because it took him about a year. $3,000. I know some of you right now in 2019 as adults will actually look in the mirror and tell yourself that you're not capable of earning money or more money or finding a way to provide financially for something that you either want or need, because we as a society are conditioned to stop at the first sign of resistance or the first obstacle or the first little test of our actual resiliency. So I'm going to tell you the story of David at 10 years old, making a commitment to his grandmother that he was going to earn $3,000 and go on a European trip with her. But if that's not enough, that's what he did as a child. Then as a young adult, he found himself through a number of circumstances homeless at the age of 24. I want you to process this. 24 years old and homeless. What do? Well, here's what he did. He found a way. He got a job. He worked through the ranks into the management side of that job, got moved from Southwest Florida to Washington, D.C., paid for college at the age of 31, attended college, graduated, and after graduating college with honors, went and got an advanced degree in economics and international studies at George Washington University, graduated with honors and received a fellowship and got a job within the federal government that landed him as a foreign diplomat, so that literally in less than 20 years from being homeless, he was a foreign diplomat for our country living in Indonesia. So I want that to sink in for a second, because as I said, we all watch inspirational movies and we all try to get motivated and do things. I was fortunate enough, I don't know why, other than it was just a divine guidance, that I met David during his 3 weeks here in Southwest Florida. He was only here for 3 weeks. And if you watch the whole interview, it's fascinating. But he literally resigned from his post as a foreign diplomat living in Indonesia and went on a vision quest, traveled all across the world, literally. Indonesia, Australia, New Zealand, flew up to the North American West Coast, went through Vancouver, British Columbia, then down through the States. He hit Washington, he hit Oregon, he hit Northern California. Then he worked his way across to where he grew up, right here in Southwest Florida. And he was only here for 3 weeks. And in that 3-week time frame, I was fortunate enough to meet him. I met him around his 4th or 5th day here. And we started talking, and the more we talked, the more we realized, wow, we've got so many cool things in common. And after hearing his story, I said, your story needs to get out there. I'm telling you right now, if you haven't watched it, watch it. He will be somebody that they write books about and do a movie about, because he's that amazing. I just told you 2 quick stories. How he raised $3,000 as a 10-year-old kid, and then how he went from homeless to a foreign diplomat with an incredible career in our federal government in less than 20 years. But it speaks to what we've been talking about all along. So for those of you sitting back going, oh, here it goes. Look, I'm here to do one thing. Eliminate your ability to convince yourself that you don't deserve it, or to convince yourself that you can't do it, or to convince yourself that blank, 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 dot, 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 whatever. I'm here to say to you, if you want something, you truly want something, and then you're willing to follow the steps, you can have anything and you can do anything you want. And it's not a bunch of BS or hot air. I'm giving you the blueprint, but I'm also giving you a real life example, 2 examples of an individual that speaks volumes of what each of us are capable of if we don't allow ourselves the limiting beliefs and the fear of. So let's talk a little bit about this. I've talked for weeks. Why is it that we fail to achieve the goals that we set for ourselves? And I said the first one is that we fail to create, we fail to prepare ourselves, and we fail to create the environment that we need for success. And we've talked about that at length. So tonight we're going to go to the second reason. And the second reason is profound. The second reason is fear. We as individuals, unfortunately, too many times allow ourselves to be controlled by our fears. So let's debunk this for a second, because too many people run around saying, oh, fear is just false evidence appearing real, and they try to make it a bunch of hokiness. And the reality is it's not. Fear is real. Fear creates and causes a real chemical reaction in our bodies. But there are two types of fears, so we're going to kind of identify that. The first type of fear is a real fear, which is called self-preservation. And when I say self-preservation, ask yourself, have you ever been in a situation where literally you felt everything happen? You felt the hairs on your arms or on your neck or on your back stand up. Your body began to get rigid. Your heart rate began to pound. Your pulse began to race. It's called fight or flight syndrome, and it's real. It's in our bodies. It's a chemical reaction when our bodies are sensing that we are in danger. So there is a very real fear of self-preservation when we sense danger. So if you're swimming in the water and you see a fin pop up, don't tell me that that's all false evidence appearing real. That's a very genuine fear. Or you're walking and you hear this dog barking or growling and you look over your shoulder or you look across the street and you see this nasty looking big dog walking at you, not smiling, not with its tongue hanging out, not with its tail wagging, but looking like, hey, you know what? I think I'd like to take a chunk out of you. So there are real fears. Middle of the night, you hear some breaking of the glass because someone's breaking it. Like, there are legitimate fears that create that reaction within our bodies. Now, on the other side, there's the unnatural illusion fear. And it's not the fear of self-preservation caused by the sensing of danger. It's the fear of the unknown. I'm going to pause here for a second because I'm going to ask you, are you willing to admit that at times you have been paralyzed by the unknown, the fear of the unknown? It's not a genuine fear. It's not a legitimate fear. It's real, but it's a fear of the unknown, and it paralyzes us, and it prevents us from ever achieving our fullest potential. Because it's an illusion in our minds. That's what that fear is. It's all an illusion. It creates the same chemical reaction, but we actually control it. Now, I can tell you right now, the majority of times that fear is caused by what's called an assumption. We make assumptions about things. I love it, Mike. Absolutely. You go out there in the woods, I don't care what type of ammunition you got or what you're carrying, if you hear all kinds of noises in the woods and then all of a sudden everything goes silent or everything scatters, you know there's something real there, even if you can't see what it is. I happen to be fascinated. You're going to think I'm nuts, all of you, but I happen to be fascinated by Bigfoot. I think Bigfoot is real. I've never seen him. I don't really want to see him, but I believe that there is something that exists that we've not yet discovered because it's smarter than us, and it manages to have its fun when people are wandering in the woods or hiking or whatever. So the bottom line is, that is a fear of the unknown, but it still creates that same chemical reaction in our bodies. Now, the problem is if you're walking in the woods and you have the unnatural fear of Bigfoot, I'm okay with that because you could be wrong and it might just be a grizzly bear, which still doesn't work out well for you, or a jaguar or whatever. But here's my point. When you have the unnatural fear of doing something that you really want to do, well, that's the fear of failure. That's the fear of judgment. And I want to take a few minutes because that is, again, a self-imposed prison. We have to recognize, we have to make peace with the fact that, and if you follow my post, you understand that I've been preaching this for a long time. But I'm trying to dial in on it right now because I know right now, when I do these videos, everybody that watches is not a fan of John Costino. Everyone that watches is not rooting for me to succeed. There are plenty of people that watch and have a ridiculous jealousy that they actually want to see me fail. They want to see me struggle. So I've made peace with across the board. There are people that are John Costino, fans and supporters, and they're a part of my life. And there are plenty of people that for whatever reason are not. And they'd rather watch me fail. But here's my point. I don't let anybody affect me. I'm happy when many of you are here because you're like extended family to me. But I have zero fear of being judged or being ridiculed or being criticized. I have no fear of failure because there is no failure. As long as I am making the attempt and giving my best effort, the result doesn't matter. So I'm going to pause there for a second because as I've worked with so many of you and as I've talked with thousands of you, if not tens of thousands of you, the number one thing that prevents you from getting to where you want to go from where you are is that fear of judgment, that fear of being criticized, ridiculed, whatever, the fear of the unknown. So I want to pause there for a second and ask yourself, am I living free right now, or am I in a self-imposed, invisible prison in my mind because I am afraid? I have a fear of being judged by other people. I have a fear of failing that is absolutely, again, illusion in my mind because my failure is nothing. It's just an attempt that didn't work out. And the more times that you're willing to keep making the attempt, the closer you get to where you want to go. And I'm talking about anything in life. Very few champions go their entire career without ever losing. In fact, I'll use a really prominent one right now. The Super Bowl is in a couple of weeks. And almost like every year, we can expect that the New England Patriots are going to be in the Super Bowl. And their quarterback happens to be Tom Brady. Now, there are people that argue whether he is or is not the greatest quarterback of all time. So I want you to think about this for a second. Tom Brady has been to the Super Bowl multiple times. He's won the Super Bowl multiple times. He's been the MVP of the Super Bowl multiple times. I will say if he's not the greatest, he's one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the history of the NFL. But there are still people that will criticize him. There are still people that will try to find a way to negate his success, to justify or to criticize things that have happened. So if it happens to somebody of that caliber, you better believe it's going to happen to you. But here's the point, who cares? Tom Brady doesn't think about the Super Bowl losses because he lost last year to the Philadelphia Eagles and he lost to the New York Giants, I forget how many years ago. And he may have even lost a third time, I'm not sure. But my point is, who cares? Who cares? Count the victories. Count the success. I'm sure there's got to be a New England Patriots fan that's going to let me know. But my point is not being statistically correct. My point is the overall thought process that Tom Brady is focused on the winning and he lets the losing games go. It may stimulate him or inspire him or motivate him to go work harder, but he doesn't dwell on it. So my point is, you have to be focused on the positives of where you want to go. Now, how do you get there? How do you get past the fear of the unknown and the fear of judgment and the fear of being ridiculed and the fear of failure? Well, you replace the fear, okay? You don't dispute that whether it's real or not. You replace it with desire. You replace it with passion. You replace it with the things that you do want and you focus on them. Now, I've said to you many, many times, what you want doesn't matter. What you want doesn't matter. And we're going to replace what you want with what are you willing to do? Okay? What are you willing to do? How much time are you willing to invest? How much effort are you willing to invest in preparing and practicing to go out there and have that success? Ask yourself, what is no longer acceptable to me? What is it that is no longer acceptable that will drive you? What are the obstacles or singular obstacle that is preventing you? Because sometimes it's just identifying, I want to go in this direction, but there's a brick wall. So that's an obstacle. Go around it, knock it down, whatever. But the point is, identify, stop and think. Don't say, I can't. Don't sit back saying, up until now, I haven't been able to. Say, why? What is the obstacle that's preventing me? What is my motivation? What is my motivation to accomplish it? See, again, if you set out to do something without really identifying what your motivation is, you're probably never going to get it because you're off course. Like when people say to me, I want to make more money. Why? And they don't really know. See, if you're a child, if you're a young child, and you say things like, I just want to be rich, it's okay. But when you're an adult, it's no longer okay. You need to have more specific targets. You have to have more of a core value, okay? A real result, not just, well, I want to be rich or I want to have money. For what reason? And I'm not here to judge what your reason is. I'm here to say you need to identify what that reason is and then work towards it. When people say, I want to be healthy, what does that mean? I want to lose weight. What does that mean? I'm too fat. What does that mean? That's why people fail to sustain and therefore achieve their goals. Because they're not specific enough. They're not even on target. So these are some things that you have to ask yourself. Now, to give you a little bit of help, again, I'm gonna reference David's story because, sadly, I'm positive that the majority of you haven't watched it. And if you have, why haven't you been commenting? But here's my point. Whether you have or haven't is irrelevant. Here's a kid at 10 years old in 1980. After his grandfather passed away, he's sitting with his grandmother. And she mentions to him, I'm going to miss your grandfather, and there's a whole bunch of stuff. But the one that sticks out to him was, I don't have my travel partner anymore. I don't have my travel partner to go on trips. So little David at 10 years old says, I'll go with you, Grandma. And she smiles and she's like, that's beautiful, that's wonderful. But in the back of her mind, she's thinking, where are you going to get $3,000? You're a 10-year-old kid. But she was supportive and encouraging. And she said, talk to your parents. So he talks to his parents. Again, they love him. It's all good, but they don't have the $3,000 to send him. So everybody's supportive and encouraging, but no one's handing him $3,000. So put that in perspective. What do? You're 10 years old. You're 11 years old. What is your skill set? How are you going to make $3,000? But here's the difference. David wasn't saying, well, geez, I'm only 10. How am I going to do this? He said, I want to go to Europe with my grandmother. When she told him the cities that she was planning to go to, he was so fascinated because he had studied them the year before doing the book report. So he had a laser focus that he wanted to go to Europe. Number one, to help his grandmother's grieving. To say, I'll go with you. You're not alone. We can still do this. But also a very personal reason that he wanted to go to Europe and see these different areas. So here he is at 10 years old. I'm going to do it. Now, here's the irony of it. I don't know who you are watching right now. I don't know what your skills are, but I can promise you, you probably have more skills and more resources available to you than a 10-year-old kid in 1980. Not a 10-year-old kid today that can Google stuff and order stuff. 10 years old. But to give you the short version, and I'm still telling you, watch the video. He had one skill that he was aware of. He was an artist. He could draw. So he drew up a cartoon. He went and made copies of it, and he went and visited all of his neighbors. So imagine a little 10-year-old kid knocking on the door and saying, hey, here's one of my skills, but I have all kinds of talents. What can I do? What job or what work can I do for you that you can pay me for because I need to make $3,000 to go on a trip with my grandmother. Let that sink in for a second. 10-year-old kid knocks on the door, hands you a drawing, says, this is just one of my skills. There's a lot of stuff I can do. What can I do for you? What kind of work can I do for you? What do you need done that you can pay me for? Because I need to make $3,000 to go on this trip with my grandmother. How do you not absolutely just get inspired by that little kid? Now, here's the funny thing. Here was his skill set. He was already cutting the lawn, mowing the lawn at his house. So some of the neighbors hired him to cut their lawn, and he ended up with a regular gig with 6 lawns. Some of the neighbors had little kids. Now, he's already 10. So how little does this kid have to be that they would trust a 10-year-old to babysit? But he picked up some babysitting jobs. He'd been studying classical piano since the age of 5. So this little 10-year-old, 11-year-old kid had some skills with the piano. He got students. He was teaching piano lessons to other people. Now, here's the cool thing. This is the story that blew me away, and that's when I said to him, you've got to tell this story. So he's now 10 and a half, not quite 11 years old, and one of his neighbors says, look, we need landscaping. And I'm sure they probably said it in a way to discourage him, but to say, hey, we'd love to hire you, but we need a landscaper. You don't need the lawn cut. We need landscaping. So he smiles and he says, perfect. I'm a great landscaper. Let's get to it. Now, again, I want you to process this. The neighbor says, we need landscaping. And the little kid says, no problem. I'm a great landscaper. How many of you guys think that there's a little level of confidence, a little level of self-confidence in there? But more than self-confidence, David had a very high self-worth. And he said, I can do anything. So here's what he did. He took his skills as an artist and he drew a sketch of their property. Went with his mom when she had to go to the store, went with her, and then went into the lawn and garden center and asked for the manager and got the manager to sit with him for a minute. And he said, listen, now I want you guys to think about this. This is a 10, 11-year-old kid. He said, I got a landscaping job to do, and I don't know how to landscape. Here's the property. Let's work out some kind of a deal because I need you to give me some ideas and help me figure out how to landscape this property, and I'll buy all of the supplies through your store. I'm begging you right now to respond. How many of you would look at that kid and say, holy smokes, I'm helping that kid out? That's a kid that's going places. That's a kid that's got ingenuity and resilience and confidence. You know, all the things that we look for in people. This kid tells the manager, I don't know how to landscape, but we're going to work a deal out and you're going to show me how. And you know what? He did. So all of a sudden, he goes back. Watch this. The manager of the lawn and garden center walks him around. They pick out different plans. They put together a game plan. David goes back to the neighbor and says, okay, here's what we're going to do. And he basically shows them the plan that they worked out. He says, this is how much it's going to cost. This is how long it's going to take. He then gets them to give him the money. He takes it to the lawn and garden center and has all of the supplies delivered to the property. Now, here's the crazy part. If you know anything about landscaping, it's usually a whole team that comes in and they get it done in a day or two. This is one kid without all the tools that he needs. So it takes him a couple of weeks. And part of the process was the removal of an orange tree. So the reason I'm telling you guys this story is there were a million reasons for David to say, I can't. There were a million reasons for David to say, I can't do it. It's not possible, or I tried it. I'm an adult right now. I'm not sure how I would remove a dead orange tree. But you know what he did? He got a shovel and he kept digging and digging. And in his words, he said, I dug a hole the size of Jupiter. And then with the little saw that his dad had in the garage, started just sawing away at it and shaking it and sawing away and shaking it. until he finally removed the orange tree. That's the kind of resilience and commitment that he had to his goal. So now, all of a sudden, he completes the job and they pay him. So, moral of the story is it took a little over a year. But in a little over a year, this little 10-year-old kid earned $3,000 to take a trip with his grandmother. I'm going to leave it there and leave the rest of it for those of you that actually want to watch the interview. But you tell me that's not the most inspiring story of I can do anything, you can't stop me, and I don't care what obstacles I run into, I will find a way. I'm going to pause for a second because I want that to sink in. That's the power that all of us have if we choose to access it. Because David, I think he's an amazing individual. I think he's inspiring. I think he's special. He says, I was just a kid that really wanted to go to Europe. So who's right? I say we're both right. I think he's amazing. I think he's inspirational. I think it's a super story. But I also believe him because we're all capable of it if we really wanted to. So let's answer the questions. What do you need in order to achieve your goals? Okay, in order to achieve the goals, what do you need? He needed a plan. He needed a plan, which was to go talk to the neighbors. He needed to be resilient, that if somebody threw an obstacle in front of him, he could overcome it. He needed to have ingenuity. He needed to be creative. Because at 10 years old, your skill set is fairly small. But he knew he could cut lawns. He knew he could babysit. He knew he could teach piano. But I'm pretty positive he knew he wasn't a landscaper because he admitted it to the manager at the store. But he told the neighbors, I'm an outstanding landscaper. Hired. Let's go do this. So he had the confidence in himself, but more importantly, he had the self-worth that he could go out there and do anything. So when we ask ourselves, what is it that we need to achieve those goals? They're all within us. They're all within us. So you put the game plan together, which again is part of what I've covered in the previous weeks. What obstacles need to be eliminated? And where do I need to focus my energy? Well, what were the obstacles that he had? Well, one is he was 10. So he had a limited scope of what he could do. It was 1980. It's not like he could go become an Uber driver. So the obstacles were, I have a small scope of potential. But where is he focusing his energy? On the things that he knows he can accomplish. And I'm hammering this story home because I'm taking away any excuses that any of you have for why you don't have what you want, why you're not doing what you want, why you haven't achieved the goals that you want, and giving you the chance to reset. Literally, do like an Etch-a-Sketch. Reset and say, I'm going to do, I'm going to achieve, I'm going to accomplish, I'm going to attain, and change all of that mindset by removing the limiting beliefs and replacing them with a very high level of self-confidence and a very high level of self-worth, and then applying the things that we've talked about. I mean, think about it, folks. This is not rocket science. Must have a game plan and a blueprint. I've been talking about this forever. Must have a daily plan of action and be consistent with it. Must be accountable. He was accountable to his grandmother. He was accountable to all the people that hired him. Must have realistic and measurable goals. I don't know. Was it realistic for a 10-year-old kid to assume he could make $3,000, in a year? I don't know. In 1980? It's not like think about it. In 1980, the minimum wage was like $2.30. They're out there marching and protesting and picketing that they want $15 an hour. Back then it was like $2 an hour. So my point is, he was applying all these things. Are you? Are you applying these things? Or are you looking, because again, I'm not criticizing you, I'm not judging you, I'm just asking you, are you looking for an excuse to quit? Are you looking for an excuse to fail? Are you looking for an excuse not to start? When you hit a wall, do you go, okay? Because see, sometimes the wall is a screen. If you close your eyes and you put your hand out and you touch a screen in the window, it's a wall. And if you're looking for a reason to stop, that's enough of a barrier to prevent you from going anywhere. But you know what? If you're unstoppable, if you're limitless, if your focus is I can overcome anything, then you push a little bit and all of a sudden the screen breaks because it's not that strong and you push through it. Same thing with, it could be drywall or it could be plywood. It's going to feel, okay, it's going to feel like you're stopped. But you know what? You can put your fist through drywall. You can put your fist through plywood. It just comes down to, are you looking for a reason not to, or are you looking for a reason to accomplish your goals? Now, I want you to watch the video, but I'm also going to go ahead and throw in a second story, because if you're not impressed with that 10-year-old kid, okay, I mean, I think there's something missing if you're not impressed with that story. But just in case you're not, because we like to make excuses for ourselves, this young man, through a whole bunch of just horrible, painful circumstances, found himself homeless at 24 years old. And at 24 years old, that same resilience, that same ingenuity kicked in. And here's what he did. He told me point blank, he said, I needed to find a place to live. I'd been on the streets for a while and I was running out of hope. So he went to the Boys and Girls Club and he said to the person running the facility, I need a place to sleep and I will do any work that you need done in exchange. I'm not looking for charity, but please, I need a place to stay. I need a place to live. I need shelter. And in exchange, I will work. So he said, they put me to work and he did work. Now here's the cool thing. He wasn't one of those lazy people who was filled with entitlement and resentment. He did everything that they asked with passion. And the person that ran the facility saw in this kid who's now 24 years old, an individual that needed a break, needed a positive break. So you know what they did? They made phone calls and they found him a job working at a Kinko's. Now I want to put this in perspective. They didn't say, here's $1 million. They didn't say, here's some amazing, wonderful job. They got him a job working minimum wage at a Kinko's, and he was grateful. He took the job. He kept working at the Boys and Girls Club so that he had a place to live, but now he was earning money. Now here's the cool thing about the story. And again, watch the interview I did with him. I'm giving you the Cliff Notes version. He worked so hard in that job at Kinko's that they made him a manager, and then they made him a regional trainer to where he was training the people, the employees, created processes for them to run more efficiently at 4 or 5 different Kinko's. Now watch this. Kinko's realized we're wasting this kid down in Florida, and they moved him to a much larger area. They gave him a much larger territory up in Washington, D.C., and he continued to work hard and thrive. And because of his hard work, his commitment, his ingenuity, his passion, he kept getting moved up, and then he finds himself at 31 years old. 31 years old, so 7 years later, going to college. Now, I'm just being honest with you. Number one, if I'm 30 years old and I haven't gone to college, I'm not going. I would just say that's not my career path and I would have found a different path. But he always knew he had it in him. He had a thirst for knowledge. He wanted to. So at 31 years old, he started working full-time, attending college full-time. He paid his own way. And like I said, graduated with honors in college to the point where he then said, I'm not done learning. And he went from George Mason University to a graduate degree at a very prestigious George Washington University. And again, worked, paid for school himself, and worked hard all the way through school to the point where, again, graduated with honors and was given a fellowship. This was under the Bush administration. He was given a 2-year position in the federal government, of which, again, here's the common thread. He overachieved. He worked hard. He got noticed. And all of a sudden, after that 2-year stint, he found himself in a position where some undersecretary in our federal government recognized his value, and he said, "You're not being fully utilized." All of a sudden, he now finds himself traveling the world in an extremely prestigious position, working within the government to create these different processes, much like he did for Kinko's in a small scale, to the point where he literally, you ready for this? Visited 50 different countries. He speaks 3 languages, but he traveled 50 different countries and ultimately ended up as a foreign diplomat in Indonesia. How do you do that? How do you go from homeless, hard work, consistency, resilience, ingenuity, passion? Don't do what's asked of you. Do what you're capable of doing. Overachieve. Eventually somebody will notice you. So all of a sudden, David has broken through every barrier. He is elevated past any obstacle. And at 48 years old, is living what everyone would consider to be a charmed life, achieved all of his goals, followed his passion. And here's where I'm going to leave the story. At 48 years old, he looked in the mirror and he said, "This isn't my passion anymore." Achieved all the goals, overachieved, and resigned his position as a diplomat and went on a vision quest, which he's still on right now, which started in Indonesia. And when he resigned, he set out, like I said, Australia, New Zealand, back to Indonesia, up to Vancouver, British Columbia, down through Washington State, Oregon, California, and then across the United States. He's been traveling since August. This is the end of January. That's a serious vision quest where he is showing the ultimate courage. He's conquering the fear of the unknown. He's pushing himself to limits that, in his words, he used to allow himself to be held by. He allowed the fear of the unknown. Even though what an amazing, courageous story, he still wasn't honoring himself and achieving his greatest potential. I was blessed enough to meet him in that short little window here in Southwest Florida. And tomorrow he leaves for Germany. He gave himself a little treat. He's down in the Keys doing some scuba diving for his last couple days in North America, and it's off to Germany. So I don't know if or when I'm going to see him again. But you know what? My life has been absolutely enriched in the short time we spent together. We will remain friends. We'll communicate wherever he is on the globe. But the point I'm trying to share with you right now is he gave me the gift over the last couple of weeks of this story for you. To the point where on Sunday I said to him, "Please, before you leave, let's do this Facebook Live, because I'm telling you, somebody is going to hear your story. They're going to write a book and they're going to do a movie. And I want to be able to say, I told you so. Because this is how it happens. No one knows his story yet, but they will. And you have the chance if you choose." So you could sit there and just go, "Who cares?" and go right back to the existence that you have right now. And I just pray to God that it is exactly what fulfills you. I hope that you're filled with passion. However, if you're not, what is your excuse? What is holding you back? Why are you not achieving every single goal that you have for yourself? Why are you not living the life that you deserve to live? What excuses are you making for yourself or accepting? What obstacles have you allowed to stop you? That's what I'm here to do. I'm here to ask you the questions and point you in the direction to find the answers. I don't have the answers for you. I have the blueprint for you. I have the blueprint for you. I have the skills to help you, but you have the answers. Now, next Wednesday, next Wednesday, we will begin to set a game plan for 2019. But the reason I've taken the last 3, 4, 5 weeks doing this is because you're not going to achieve any goals if you don't prepare yourself. You're not going to stay committed and sustain the effort required if you are not prepared. So guess what? You decide over these next 6 days whether or not you want to really be prepared, and then go ahead and attack whatever your goals are, whatever you want out of your life, whether it's physical health and fitness, so whether it's weight loss or strength gain, or you just want to change your appearance, or nothing to do with your appearance. You want to improve your health. You want to get off all the pharmaceutical medications that you're on. We can do that if you choose it. If you are willing and you are committed and you're going to invest the time and the effort. If it is making more money, starting a home-based business. See, so many people go, oh, I've tried that before. I don't care how many times you've tried and struggled or tried and failed. I care how many times you're willing to go one more time, because until you're prepared, until you are committed to a daily, consistent effort with an effective blueprint for success, nothing is going to work. But if it's to make more money and to become more financially stable, whether it's health or finances, we can accomplish that. Whether you want to improve the relationships in your life instead of complaining about stuff, we can do that. But it starts with you. It starts with asking yourself the question, and then it ends with you deciding what that answer is going to be. Went a little bit longer than I had planned tonight, but this is John Costino saying thank you so much for being here. Until next Wednesday, good night, God bless. Please go watch that interview I did with David on Sunday and comment. I'll know you watched it based upon the comments that you leave. And if you think I'm kidding, that gentleman is the next Rudy Rudiger or whatever. Rudy used to be one of my favorite of all-time inspirational stories. Some of you know the story of Carl Brashear, the Navy diver, okay? I want you to understand, I don't care who it is that inspired you. David Kincaid is one of those people, and I was fortunate enough and blessed to meet him. I'm trying to share him with you. So until next Wednesday, this is John Costino saying thanks for being here. Good night, God bless. Share this video, comment on this video, get this message out there, but more importantly, make sure that you are looking in the mirror and asking yourself the right questions and preparing yourself for what's ahead here in 2019. Good night, everyone.